What's going down, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Commander Ad Populum. Together we are Commander for the people, by the people, for the people. My name is Ryan. This is episode 48. Welcome back. Welcome to the show if it's your first show, of course. And huge thank you to FusionGamingOnline.com. They are the official sponsors of Commander Ad Populum. You can head there for all of your gaming needs, and of course you can find all of Fusion's sponsored content on themanabase.com. They are still open, functional. Their warehouse is shipping stuff out, so head over, check them out. Great group of people to be involved with for myself. Speaking of a great group of people, big thank you and shout out to all of the Patreon supporters at patreon.com/cadpopcast, and brand new patron this week. Big personal thank you to William Tonjes. Still not sure if I'm saying it correctly, but William, you know who you are, and I do thank you. If anybody else is interested in becoming a patron or just checking out the benefits or seeing some of the extra content from myself, that is a platform that I have to launch it on, and it's all available there for free. That is patreon.com/cadpopcast. We started a introductory mana base primer there that I look to the Discord and the Commander Ad Populum community at large to help me build. I've got some altered art tutorial there, and keep an eye out because there is going to be some more altered art tutorial videos and time-lapse videos coming up on the brand new, soon-to-launch Commander Ad Populum YouTube channel. There's not going to be a ton there, I'm not going to lie, but if anybody does ever have questions, I want to be able to point somewhere that isn't just the Patreon page, because sometimes I feel like when I point people there, it's like, hey, give me money, consume my content, and that's not what that is completely about. So I do want to have extra stuff available for people, and of course YouTube gives me that opportunity, and it makes it very easy for me to post it to the Patreon page, the Facebook page, the Twitter page, right? And those are at CadPopcast on Twitter. Commander Ad Populum is the Facebook group. And of course, I can link to that if anybody's asking in the Commander Ad Populum Discord, which is, of course, one of the benefits to becoming a patron is gaining access to that. So huge thank you to all the patrons. You guys do make it possible. And I very much hope that in the near future, we do get some news regarding 2020 and beyond Magic Fests, Commander Fests, because we are in the midst of a kind of a public health crisis, and a little bit that's what I want to talk about today. But again, like last week, not the doom and gloom, because every single direction you turn on any type of media platform, you're being bombarded with it. I want to spread some positivity. I've seen a ton of people either on Facebook or on Twitter, copying and pasting Discord threads or posting on Facebook groups about, hey, come play, or play over Discord, play over Messenger, play over Skype. And people are building up these interesting rigs, like they're either like a cardboard box for sound and light that they're fitting a playmat into and shining like a webcam or their cell phone camera down onto their playmat. And a playmat is almost the perfect like aspect ratio for like widescreen format, like a computer screen, TV screen, phone screen when it's sideways. And you record yourself or you broadcast yourself, you stream yourself to 3 other people, and whatever platform you're on, Messenger, Skype, Discord, what have you, you receive 3 other feeds. You split your screen 3 ways and you can see 3 other people's playmats, and you just go around taking turns, and it's very much just playing online with 3 other people webcam style. It's almost like 2001 type webcam conversations when you're like with 3 people, you're multi-calling people. I don't know if anybody did that, man. I was raised in the 90s, so of course I was into that when that was a thing. And big thank you, of course, to everybody who's invited me or asked me about doing it. But my country bumpkin internet, as I call it, I had satellite internet for a while, and I got broadband internet. And it's just with the strain of so many people nationwide, either working at home or accessing additional internet services like streaming Netflix or what have you while they're at home in quarantine, just bogs my internet right down, and I can't do any of that. So I'm going on week 3, or I'm heading into week 4 without playing Magic. And that's the next thing that I wanted to talk about is what have people been doing now that they're not playing as much Magic? The streaming online with cell phone or webcam is one thing, and all of those weird scaffolding rigs made out of like boxes and just random scraps of wood like duct taped together and elastic banding your phone onto it, like that's one thing, and that's cool. And I love to see that kind of innovation to continue to play the game that we all love. But I also would like to highlight some of the other things that you can do. And of course, go to your favorite website and read the authors that are writing about the game that you love. I love checking out Joey Schultz and Dana Roach's articles on EDH Rec every week. And of course, I'm consuming all of the podcast content that I normally do in the evenings now when I'm painting. And I'll link all of the, you know what I'll do? I'll link all of, or I'll at all of the content that I listen to in maybe part 1 of the CAD Popcast community section for episode 48. That is this episode. And then I'll link a few of the people that I read as well. Dana, Joey Schultz, at the Kristen Emily from Hipsters. I love Jay and Ellie, and he's got a new book coming out, which I'm sure is going to be fabulous because it outlines like the backstory of over 100 different legendary characters from Magic's history. It's going to be so awesome. So definitely check that out if we are going to be in quarantine until July. I think that comes out. So that was another thing, like the streaming and the cardboard box scaffolding, consuming content that you like. Of course, I'm crazy busy right now because my little guy is at home instead of being at daycare. So I'm with him 5 days a week. And then basically when my wife gets home from work, I lock myself in the office and paint until I fall asleep. So I'm busy. And the last thing that I wanted to say to people when you're at home, if you're not busy, is get off your ass and do something. Like, this is the exact type of scenario, being at home, unable to interact with other people, that really gets people down. And, people are concerned about, not getting in touch with their friends or not seeing their family. Well, get on the phone or do a FaceTime call or a video call. If you don't have to ration food, get online and start learning how to cook something new. That I know always makes my wife happy when she can bake something. Call your friends, ask them how they're doing. Get after house projects that you've been putting off. Like, I've got to rip some tile up behind my bar. And when I find a spare moment between cards and when I don't have to kind of manage a 2-year-old, with grout dust and broken bits of sharp tile and stuff, that's my project. That's what I'm going to do. It's spring. Spring's coming up in some parts of the world, and it's already there in other parts. While practicing some safe social distancing, get outside and get some fresh air that really makes people feel better. I know some people are concerned about sitting on their butt and gaining weight or their body changing if they're not being able to get to the gym. Make it happen. Do a workout in your own house. Go for a jog. Of course, make sure it's safe for you to do that, right? The social distancing thing, icy road conditions, what have you. Make sure it's safe for you to do the thing that you want to do. But essentially, just get out there and you can still make it happen, whatever it is. Organize your Magic collection is another one that is centered in the Magic community. People are posting pictures I've seen on Facebook of just stacks and boxes and heaps and those library filing card sorting things from old libraries that have all their collections sorted. Big long white boxes that are all color-coded, coordinated, alphabetical, whatever it is that you need to do. Make it happen. If you have some time, do it. Don't procrastinate. Get off of Netflix. You're slowing down my internet. So that's what I wanted to talk about today in the community section. Just kind of some kind of just whatever positivity that we can find in this uncertain and what feels like a negative time. We can find a positive in it, either by connecting online through streaming games or connecting via video calls with our friends, family, consuming content, reading, taking some us time. Maybe that's what you classify your reading time as, is just some you time to unpack physically and mentally from maybe what was a very stressful last week of work or last month of work. Or if you still are working, first of all, huge shout out to all of the people that are still working. And then second of all, make sure you're taking that time to unpack with maybe some of the stuff that I've suggested today. If you want that unpacking time, that mental and physical unpack time to be Magic related, there's hopefully some of the stuff that you might enjoy is the stuff that I've found pleasure in the stuff I've talked about today. So just after this, we are going to get to the mechanics in the set Scourge. So Scourge is going to be the set that we do in today's set retro, and last week I highlighted that I wanted to make sure I covered the mechanics that were unveiled in the set that we're talking about in the set retro. So today's technical section is going to cover what I mean when I say cost matters, land cycling, and storm. Other mechanics included double strike, morph, tribal, cycling, but we've already covered those things, so I wanted to specifically talk about cost matters. And when I say that in relation to the set Scourge, what I mean is cards in the set cared about things that had a converted mana cost of 6 or greater. And when we look at converted mana cost, what I'm talking about is the number in the top right corner of the card. A lot of cards in Scourge checked when you cast something with converted mana cost 6 or more. And those things would trigger usually on cast. The question that I've faced in the past a whole bunch of times is, well, what if it's X, right? Just X in the casting cost, or like red X. And for X, you have to think of it like this. Anywhere that a card with an X in its upper corner for converted mana cost, anywhere that card exists, X is 0 unless that spell is on the stack. That's the easiest way to look at it. So if a card, you cast a card that says, search for a card with converted mana cost 6 or greater. I can't search for, my X cost Hydra that's green X, because its converted mana cost is green plus X equals 0. So that is 2 plus 0. At the same time, if I cast that green, and then I put 8 into X, green plus 8, while it's on the stack, if somebody cast a spell that said counter target spell with converted mana cost X or greater, they would lay that on top of my Hydra on the stack, and it would go green plus 8, because that's what X is, and it would see that its converted mana cost is 10, and it would counter it. The same is true for discard a card with converted mana cost X or greater. Green X is 2. Bring something back from your graveyard. Green X, that's still 2. The only time it counts under most circumstances is when it's on the stack. There was that card in Eldraine that drew you cards or something, that creature Gadwick the Wizened. He changed a little bit how X worked, but by and large, or to my knowledge, he's the only one that does that. So that's how X works with converted mana cost 6 or greater, or cost matters cards in Scourge. And we're going to look at like 1 or 2 of them, or maybe 1 cycle of them. So I just thought I'd mention it. Next one up, land cycling. Just like cycling, where it's pay cost, discard this card, and draw a card. That's what cycling is. Land cycling, or basic land cycling, later revealed, or type cycling, revealed in Time Spiral block, is pay cost, discard this card, search your library for type of thing, in this case, land, or basic land if something has swamp cycling. So there's a couple zombies that have this. There's a few tribe things that have this, that fetch you a basic out of your library of the appropriate color that the tribe that you're playing is in. I think Twisted Abomination it's the only one that comes to mind. That's the zombie one that you might play. And that's just because it searches a land for you, and then you can reanimate it. And essentially it's kind of just acts as like a land tutor for you. So I don't know, it's kind of cool. I just thought I'd mention it. The big one, of course, though, for Scourge is Storm. And the Storm mechanic is generally regarded as the most degenerate and broken mechanic or ability ever printed in Magic. Wizards of the Coast, or Magic R&D, or development, or whatever you want to call them, actually have what they call the Storm scale. It's a scale from 1 to 10, and Storm is 10. We will never reprint this ever again. And like a 1 or a 0 is like evergreen mechanics like flying. You'll see them in every single set. And the closer something gets to a 10 on the Storm scale, the less likely it is to be reprinted. Dredge is like a 9.5. Storm is a 10 because it is the most broken mechanic ever. So what it is, It's on instants and sorceries, and when you cast an instant or sorcery with Storm, you copy it for each spell that was cast before your spell or the Storm spell that turn. Couple things to remember. It does count all spells from all players, so in Commander, this could actually be very powerful, like it's not in other formats. Second thing, when you copy, those copies go on the stack above the original, which is important sometimes. Third thing, those copies aren't being cast. They're copied, and they just go onto the stack. The only one that you're casting is the original one that's copied. It's kind of like casting a twin cast on a giant growth. The twin cast is going to make a copy of the giant growth, but you're only casting one giant growth. So Storm is unbelievably powerful with 0 converted mana cost cards or combos that allow you to play an arbitrarily large number or an infinite number of spells in a turn, and then you cast your Storm spell and you copy it like a million times. Or a card like Flusterstorm exists because of the mechanic Storm in Scourge, even though it wasn't printed there. It exists and it counters a spell unless the opponent pays 1. But if there's been a bunch of spells cast in a turn, like a combo turn or a counterspell war in CEDH, then you Flusterstorm, you can choose new targets for all of those different things, or you like all of the different counter unless they pay 1, or you can pile all of the counter unless they pay 1 onto one spell that you want them to, say, pay 5 or 6 or 7 mana, or else it's countered. So Storm has some flexibility in ability or some range in what it can do. Gain life, destroy artifacts, play stuff for free, deal damage. It does all of these different things, and under pretty much any circumstance that you see it in, it's backed by some form of infinite or some form of, I'm going to cast my whole deck. Even though that's not infinite, it's usually enough. If you cast like 50 things and then deal 2 times 50 damage to everybody because you're copying a do 2 damage spell 50 times, it's going to do it, right? So I remember when this was printed, even the top of the CMC chart, the Dragon Storm, I remember when that was printed into Standard, and it helped ban a card in Modern for a while, or still. And it now actually exists as a instant 40 damage combo with Lathless Dragon Queen. All these years later, Storm is still broken, even on the least breakable card, because it costs like 9 or 10 mana. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. Cool mechanics. The Storm makes it relevant. The cycling makes it relevant. The 6 CMC or greater theme of the set makes it a relevant set to Commander. So this is going to be a good one. Let's get to it right now. All right, Scourge. This is the third set, or the second small set, in the Onslaught block. 29th expansion for Magic the Gathering, May 26, 2003. I think that I bought a booster box of this. I have an empty booster box that I keep like extra sleeves in my filing cabinet, so I assume that I bought one of these. Sure. Essentially, you've got Phage and Akroma. We've met them in Onslaught already. They're battling. They become fused into, of all names, of all character names exactly right now, the set retro that I'm doing, they're fused into Corona, and she is destroying the continent. It's almost poetic. It's romantic even that we're talking exactly about this. All of the different clans or colors of magic that exist on Oteria are like vying or warring for her allegiance. That is the war between all of the tribes, and that's why Corona is tribal when we look at her card. So just interesting. That's like toilet paper in white, deli meat in red, produce in green. You get the idea. So the other thing that's going on is like the Mirari is mutating all of the elves and the soldiers and the zombies and making them into gigantic, grotesque abominations of what they used to be. And that is why we're seeing so many like elves at 7 or 8 converted mana cost, or zombies that have 6 arms and 4 heads and stuff. Like, they're all messed up from the Mirari. It's like super ultra radiation Godzilla 2000 style or whatever movie that was. So, of course, tribal themed like the rest of the Onslaught block. This set in particular, though, as evidenced by its logo and the set symbol, is very centered on the tribe dragons. And for that reason, as well as what I mentioned in the technical section, very relevant to the format of Commander. Of course, lots of those dragons were legendary, and we did get a legendary dragon in our legendary creature suite for the set. But before we do, take a look at a couple of the cycles. We've got, of course, cost matter spells, the decrees, all of which, or almost all of which, see play in Commander. We'll talk about the ones that are relevant when we reach them in the card by card discussion. Dragon auras, again, very relevant cards. We'll talk about some of those. They essentially, when you played a creature with CMC 6 or more, you got them back for free enchanting that creature from your graveyard. So I've played a couple of these for sure. Storm spells, and of course the War Chiefs. There was Daru, Mistform, Undead, Goblin, and Crozen War Chiefs, and they all gave a cost reduction to cast creatures of their tribe, and then some other bonus. The soldier one was Daru War Chief, +1/+2, and cheaper soldiers. That one I've seen. I've seen Undead War Chief a ton because he gives all zombies +2/+0 and makes them cheaper. And of course, Goblin War Chief, haste and cheaper, which is always a welcome addition in Goblin decks. So looking at the legendary creatures, we have 3. The first one is the dragon I was talking about. That is Bladewing the Risen. Original printing in Scourge, and he was a 4/4 for red, black, 3. 7 mana, 4/4. We're looking for an upside. He's a flyer. When Bladewing the Risen enters the battlefield, you may return target dragon card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So a dragon reanimator, so you're getting more than 4 power for your 7 mana. If you put a dragon into your graveyard on purpose, you're getting a ton of value. And of course, red, black, all dragons get +1/+1 until end of turn. All dragons get +1/+1 until end of turn. So next turn, you could feasibly activate that. If you played one more land, you could feasibly activate that 4 times and give all of your flying dragons +4/+4. Pretty cool. Next up, Corona the False God, 5/5 avatar for white, blue, black, red, green, 1. Haste. So that's weird. Why does she have haste? Well, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player untaps Corona and gains control of it. So you can attack with her the turn you get her. That's why she has haste. Whenever she attacks, creatures of the type of your choice get +3/+3 until end of turn. So the controller picks that, and whatever tribe the controller's playing, it just buffs their whole team. Gives them a pseudo overrun every turn. She goes to a new thing. So Corona is a pretty cool commander in like God's tribal decks where you pass her around, and like if we're the God tribal deck, we're just playing all of the indestructible Thorosian gods and Amonkhet gods, and we just crash in and beat in because we just choose God and everything's indestructible, and it's a cool deck. Finally, and this by far and away is the most popular commander from Scourge, this is Sliver Overlord. So first Sliver commander that we've seen since Stronghold with Sliver Queen. And this is a 7/7 for Wooburg, just like Sliver Queen. Sliver Mutant this time. And you can pay 3, search your library for a Sliver card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. The other thing you can do is 3, gain control of target Sliver. Both cool abilities. The first one, of course, gets you your gem hides and your crystallines and your pump slivers, and it just lets you do the Sliver thing, right? The second thing, or your Sliver Queen so you can combo, what have you. The second thing is gain control of target Sliver. In Scourge, if you drafted this guy, you would want to prioritize things that let you switch creature types and then steal something that you switched its type to Sliver. You can also do like big mana Sliver Overlord and then play something like, I think it's Conspiracy that switches all creature types of all creatures. Then you just activate his gain control of Sliver ability for all the creatures on the battlefield, and you take everything and you probably win that game. By and large, though, he's doing the Sliver thing because you can Sliver tutor every turn. So cool card, powerful card. I think it's the most popular Sliver commander. I'm not sure if that's because of cost or powerful card. If you're going to play Slivers, you're probably going to play it. So without further ado, onto the set. 143 cards. I'm going to go over some of the ones that I think are interesting, hidden gems, good at the time in standard or casual metas that I played in, because I played this set in the old 16-4 days, or cards that I just know are actually good. So first one, and this is kind of a weird one. I don't know why I picked this one, but I have it highlighted. Dimensional Breach. This, maybe because it's got Breach in the name, I don't know. White 5 for a sorcery. Exile all permanents. Okay. As long as any of those cards remains removed from the game or exiled, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player returns one of the exiled cards they own to the battlefield. So you get rid of everything, and then there's a slow bleed back onto the battlefield. And maybe you return your own like Big Beater or Blight Steel, and you just kill somebody with Infect. I don't know, but it is kind of a cool card. I don't see it ever getting played. Maybe it's a feel bad because it gets rid of lands. I'm not sure, but it's a cool one. There was a couple cycles in white that I wanted to highlight, but I'm going to use the other colors or other tribes to highlight the cycles that I talked about a couple minutes ago. First blue card, Aphedo Runecaster. This is a wizard for 4 mana, 2/3. Whenever a creature is turned face up, so whenever you morph something, draw a card. This was your way to dig in morph.deck, right? You wanted to jam as many of these as you could. Like I remember one time in my morph wizard casual deck, I had 3 of them on the battlefield. And that is possible in Commander with clones and what have you. You morph a creature and get some cool benefit like counter a spell or misdirect something, then draw 3 cards. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Okay, first Storm card. This is it, and this is one of the cards that actually just got Underworld Breach banned in Legacy. This is Brain Freeze, an instant for blue 1. Target player puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard. Big deal, 3 cards for 2 mana. But Storm. Whenever you cast this spell, copy it for each spell played before it this turn. You may choose new targets for the copy. Well, if I can Underworld Breach my whole deck from casting it under my graveyard, from recycling a Lion's Eye Diamond for 3 blue and Grinding Station, yeah, probably just going to mill my opponent. So Brain Freeze is used to great effect on ourselves as well, where we can cast, like if we do Isochron Scepter, Dramatic Reversal type combo, and we can infinitely cast our Dramatic Reversal, untapping our Isochron Scepter and a mana rock that gives us blue, and then we can mill ourselves and win with Thassa's Oracle, Laboratory Maniac, what have you, or mill all of our opponents because we can choose new targets with our Storm copies and just pass them the turn, and then they try and draw, and then they lose. So that's the first one. 2 mana for that. Like, what? And it existed, it's funny, it existed in the same standard environment in a couple months from now that like Ornithopter existed in. Say what you want about that standard environment. We'll talk about it a little bit when we get there with Affinity. But there was a couple years there where they kind of just didn't mean to break anything after Urza's block, but they accidentally did. So next up, I like this one. This is Day of the Dragon. A blue enchantment, blue 4. When it enters the battlefield, exile all creatures you control and put that many 5/5 flying dragon creature tokens onto the battlefield. Cool. When it leaves the battlefield, you sacrifice all dragons you control, so that could be relevant, and return all of the exiled cards to the battlefield. It's not return an exiled card for each dragon that you sacrifice as a leave the battlefield trigger from Day of the Dragons. No, you could sacrifice all your dragons or trigger sacrifice effects from sacrificing or destroying Day of Dragons yourself, and you still get all your things back. So if you have like a haste enabler and you're upcycling all of your 1/1s or 2/2s into 5/5s, this acts as blue overrun, gives you sacrifice benefits, and then lets you get all of your utility guys back after Day of the Dragons is gone. This is a cool card. It's underplayed. I know it's 7 mana, but pretty cool card. If you can give it flash and do it at the end of an opponent's turn too, bonus points. Next up, Decree of Silence. This is the first decree that I want to look at. And of course, cycle of 5. This is the one that for blue 6, whenever an opponent, it's an enchantment. I think it's the only enchantment too, I think. The other ones are instants or sorceries. Anyways, whenever an opponent casts a spell, counter that spell and put a depletion counter on Decree of Silence. If there are 3 or more depletion counters, sacrifice it. Additionally, you can cycle it for 6 and counter target spell, and of course you draw a card. What you do with this is play it with Solemnity that says you can't put counters on things that you control, or players can't put counters on things. It was printed to combat Planeswalkers, so you couldn't activate loyalty abilities, I think. But when you can't put depletion counters on your Decree of Silence because Solemnity says so, it's just a hard lock. Your opponents can't cast anything. So I thought it was worth a mention because it's just cool. I like next blue card, instant long-term plans. For 3 mana, search your library for a card, shuffle your library, then put it 3rd from the top. Just a kind of long-term plans. It's like long-term death, as the gentlemen on Legendary Creature Podcast say, of the War of the Spark Gods that you put 3rd from the top when they die. Just a cool one. Next storm card, Mind's Desire. I think that this has a place in Casual Commander, even though it's wholeheartedly and hella broken. This is 6 mana sorcery with Storm. Shuffle your library, reveal the top card. You can cast it for free. X is 0. Remember, X is 0. When you're casting for free, you don't have the option to pay mana into it, so X is always 0, but because it has Storm, if you cast like Mana Rock, 0 or 1 drop, whatever, you've got lots of mana, it's Commander, and then you can Mind's Desire like 3 or 4 times for value. You're just going to get 3 or 4 cards off the top of your deck that are like for free, for good. They're good, right? It's cool. I think it has a place. It costs 6. It's casual. Of course, it's broken with infinite mana. So just thought I'd mention it. Next up, speaking of broken cards, Pemin's Aura. This is an enchantment. You can pay blue to untap, blue to give it flying, blue to give it shroud, or colorless to buff it or pump its toughness. So this turns a creature into a morphling, and it's a 3 mana enchant creature. It goes infinite with stuff that like taps to give you more mana than just blue. So when you spend the blue to untap it, you net something. Like my Arixmathes deck could play this and make infinite green mana, for example. But it goes in lots of decks. Morphling was a powerful and prolific creature. So if you make something into a mini Morphling or a big Morphling, if it's bigger than Morphling, Pemin's Aura is a cool card. Here's another underplayed one, I think. This is a 5 mana sorcery. Draw cards equal to the highest converted mana cost among permanents you control. That is Rush of Knowledge. I think it was in Commander 11 or like an early pre-con. It's a little bit fallen out of favor because it cost 5 and people are playing smaller spells these days. But, I mean, we're still playing Grave Titans and Wormcoil Engines and 6 and 7 drops. So, I mean, it's not out of the question to pay 5 mana to draw 6 or 7 cards. I think it's a cool one. Stifle, original printing in Scourge. That is blue to counter target activated or triggered ability. That's a great one. Temporal Fissure, that's a 5 mana sorcery. Return target permanent to its owner's hand and Storm. So again, just cast a whole bunch of stuff, bounce all your opponent's stuff, or bounce the stuff that we want to bounce, right? Onto the black cards, we've got maybe the most famous zombie of all. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I guess at CAD Popcast on Twitter, let me know if I'm wrong, is Carrion Feeder. He's one of the most famous zombies, I'll say that. That is a 1/1 zombie for black. Can't block, sack a creature to give it +1/+1 counter. So important because it gets big. We've got Consumptive Goo, black for a 1/1 ooze. Pay black 2. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and put a +1/+1 counter on Consumptive Goo. That's a cool one. Decree of Pain, of course, 8 mana, destroy all creatures, draw a card for each creature destroyed, cycle it for 5, and all creatures get -2/-2, and of course draw a card. Very powerful spell, play it in your black decks if you can spend 8 mana on something. In Casual Commander, like we try to focus on here, perfectly serviceable card, and I do play it in a couple decks. Next up, Tendrils of Agony. This is the black 2 sorcery. Target player loses 2, we gain 2 with Storm. That was the preferred win condition, all the way back to vintage in like the Epic Storm or the Epic Storm was the blue-black Storm deck that went off with Tendrils. So just thought I'd mention it. Of course, Unspeakable Symbol. This was an enchantment for 3. Pay 3 life, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. In life gain strategies or just generally in Commander, if you want to dump a bunch of life into this to get a creature big enough to punch through with commander damage or just save a creature in combat, you can just pump life into it. And of course, modern day Commander without a lot of Infect or Voltron running around, life gain decks are good. We see lots of them. The Aristocrats strategy across black and other colors now is a very powerful one. Unspeakable Symbol is a good one. And speaking of Aristocrats, we've got an Aristocrat zombie, sort of. 3/2 for 4 in Vengeful Dead. Whenever Vengeful Dead or another zombie is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, so whenever it dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Pretty cool. Moving on to red, we've got Decree of Annihilation. That is exile all artifacts, creatures, lands, graveyards, and hands, full stop. That's a pretty powerful card. That's 10 mana, but you can cycle it for 7 to draw a card and destroy all lands. This is a common play in red-based stacks decks. Now we've got my favorite dragon enchant creature next. It's Dragon Breath. That is red and 1 for an enchantment aura. Enchanted creature has haste. There it is. Also, red, enchanted creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. That is the fire-breathing aspect of Dragon Breath. When a creature with converted mana cost 6 or more enters the battlefield, you may return Dragon Breath from your graveyard to the battlefield, enchanting that creature. Super awesome just to drop a fatty, reanimate a fatty because it's an ETB thing that it triggers on, and just go ham because it's got haste. If you can put something big in your graveyard, reanimate it, and have leftover mana to pay into that fire-breathing activation, give it haste, and it's just, you're off to the races. Excellent card. Of course, we've got Dragon Speaker Shaman. This was a 2/2. Dragon spells you cast cost 2 less to cast, and that is alongside the Goblin War Chief that make goblins less. Red had 2 of them in this set, just because it was the dragon set. And Dragon Storm, of course, next card, red and 8. Search your library for a dragon, put it onto the battlefield, shuffle your library. It's got Storm. So if you can manage to, pop off 3 or 4 spells in a turn before spending 8, you're probably going to win that game anyways. You might as well do it with, a bunch of dragons that either have haste or give you more dragons or deal damage equal to the number of dragons on attack. Put it in your dragon decks, kids. If you're casting dragons, cast this. It's cool. It's just cool. It's funny. We are in the set that cares about things that cost 6 CMC or greater. How about punishing things that cost 3 CMC or less? And that is Pyrostatic Pillar. That is an enchantment for red 1. Whenever a player casts a spell with converted mana cost 3 or less, Pyrostatic Pillar deals 2 damage to that player. Just thought I'd throw it out there, with the trend moving towards hyper-efficient decks and people wanting to play tuned casual decks or borderline CEDH decks. That might be a good one. Siege Gang Commander, original printing in Scourge, just throwing that out there for the Goblin players. Sulfuric Vortex, this is another players can't gain life, incremental damage type card that is going to, net you 12, 15, 18, 21 points of damage for 3 mana. It just deals 2 damage during each player's upkeep. So that's a cool one. On to green, I like Ancient Ooze. This is star for a green 5. Power and toughness, each equal to the total converted mana cost of creatures you control. Excellent in big creature decks, not so good in Hydra decks that have a lot of X's in their mana cost. Just gonna throw it out there. Remember the technical section. Fierce Empath is our first elf. It's a 1/1 for 3. When it enters a battlefield, you search for a creature with CMC 6 or greater. Put it into your hand. I play this in my Animar deck. Play it for green, and then search for like a Kozilek or a Ulamog and play it for free. Super cool card. Next up, little piece of trivia, Forgotten Ancient. This was actually the first you make the card. This was designed by the people voting week to week, day to day on art, mechanics, CMC, name, creature type. This is an elemental, 0/3 for green 3. Whenever a player casts a spell, you may put a +1/+1 counter on Forgotten Ancient. Okay, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may move any number of +1 counters from Forgotten Ancient onto other creatures. Cool. Last week we talked about Double Strike being like a community-made ability, now we're seeing a community-made card. We see the next one in Mirrodin block. Bonus points on Twitter if anybody knows what that is. Our next elf, Crozen Drover. This is a 4-drop 2/2. Creatures you cast with converted mana cost 6 or more cost 2 less to cast. So this works like how Animar works with X casting cost. Animar reduces based on the number of +1 counters he has. So what you would do is propose that you're casting the spell with X equals 10. Let's say green 10. Crozen Drover would reduce that 10 to 8. So once the game knows that you can legally cast the spell, then you have to pay all costs to cast it. Normally it would be green 10. Crozen Drover says, no, knock 2 off the top. So it would be green 8 is what we would pay. So this one does work with X spells. Couple more cards to round out the set. We've got Edgewalker. Shout out to the black-white Athreos Shadowborn Apostles decks because Shadowborn Apostles are clerics. And Edgewalker says cleric spells you cast cost white-black less to cast. And that actually reduces the colored component of the casting cost. So your Apostle would just cost colorless. So there is not very many cards that do that. And that is one that you can play to cast clerics for less or for free in some cases. And finally, the only land in the set, and the jury's still out. Some people say it's good, some people say it's bad. I think most of the people that I talk with and listen to are of the mind that Temple of the False God is a bad card. Again, at CADPopcast on Twitter, let me know. This is a land that taps for 2, but you can only tap it for 2 if you have 5 or more lands on the battlefield. So let me know. And that's Scourge. In general, in addition to Temple of the False God, let me know what you think of the whole set. I thought it was great for Commander. I think there's a ton of hidden gems. I glossed over a lot because we're crunched for time, and I'm crunched for time to edit this, really. That's why I didn't want to continue talking about more cards in this set. Of course, huge thank you to FusionGamingOnline.com for all of your Scourge, Legions, and Onslaught needs in general. They are still up and running. Huge thank you to them for sponsoring the show and for working with me and serving me when it is difficult to, procure cards because lots of LGSs are closed and you can't just go. You can still order from Fusion. Also, huge thank you to all of the Patreon supporters, the Commander Ad Populum Discord family, as I call you, refer to you, think of you guys as. You do make it all possible for me, and I very much appreciate it. So that's it. Next week, I hope to have some kind of update. That was like the sigh of relief that I'm hoping I can breathe next week when I'm back on the microphone, and maybe I've got some good news. Maybe I've gotten, maybe into the city and maybe I go and get a coffee somewhere, you know what I mean? If not, though, I will be here, everybody. I will see you next Wednesday.